Hello, this is Mr. K again. Welcome to part 9, the cow catcher. Open up a new part in Inventor. This one is quite difficult. Please make sure you're paying attention to your dimensions and how you are creating the part. Okay, the cow catcher. This one has a lot of new tasks that we're going to do that you haven't done before. There's Loft and Shell and a few other things. And so make sure you're paying attention to your dimensions as we go through here. Start a new sketch. I'm going to do it on the XZ plane, so I'm looking down at it. I'm going to rotate this so that my top view is right side up. Bring it down a little bit. And when I've done this in the past, I've realized that it's a very small shape, and so I want to make sure that my line is close to the right size. And so this first line is 1.8 inches, 1.8, and then the rest of it here I can try to go through and dimension them the way they're supposed to be, or I can just kind of fake it. And I think I'm going to just try to fake it and dimension it afterwards. So we have this top part of this house shape, and I want to line it up with the center, and so I've got that dotted line showing me that I've got it lined up with the center. And so those dotted lines will tell me that I'm equal with other things. And so there's that house shape. We've got the bottom line dimensioned here. Now I need to dimension the side. It's going to be 0.25. The other side is 0.25. From the top of this house, the total width is 1 inch. And then I want to make sure that I've got it centered. And so I'm going to take that center point and I'm going to find the center of the house, center of the bottom line here, and line them up. And so there's that bottom piece. I'm going to finish sketch. And now I'm not going to do anything with this yet. I've got to actually make another piece that's above it and then loft those two together. I'm going to combine those two to create a shape. So I'm going to create a new plane. It's going to be an offset plane, and it's going to be offset from this surface. And in order to be able to get that, I want to make sure I'm looking at the XZ plane, and then I'm going to offset it, and I want to raise it 0.75. And so I'm raising it off the XZ plane. I chose that on the left side here under origin, and that raises it up there. And so now I have a new plane sitting on top of it. If I start a new sketch on that new plane, rotate it around so I can see what I'm doing. And now I'm going to create a smaller little house shape that's going to line up on here. In order to do this time, I'm not going to touch anything behind it here. I'm just going to draw that house, kind of eyeball it. It's not going to be correct. We're going to come in and dimension it afterwards. And so there it is, and now we're going to go through and dimension it afterwards. I need to project some geometry. I'm going to project this bottom line, and that's the only one I really want to project. Everything else is going to dimension off of it. This bottom width is going to be 0.2 inches. The height on the sides are the same as the other one, 0.25. This one is also 0.25. Mentioned from this top point is going to be 0.75. I need to make sure my vertical constraint is lined up with the center. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this vertical constraint is lined up with the center of my projected line. So I'm going to choose here, and now I'm going to find my projected line. And there it is, shows up as a green dot, and it moves it over. And the last one I want to do is I want to do a collinear constraint, which means I'm going to make two lines and make them line up with each other. So I'm going to take this line and I want it to line up with my projected geometry. And you need to make sure that these are all lined up. If they're not all lined up with each other, your loft, when we try to do some work with the loft later, it's not going to work. Finish the sketch. I now have two different shapes here. I'm going to go over here and choose Loft. I'm going to choose the first sketch, and then I'm going to come up and choose the second sketch, and it lofts those two, basically combines them into one shape. We'll say OK, and there's my loft. I'm going to come over here to the work plane and change its visibility, spin it around so I can see each particular side, and now I'm going to do some work with this and these two angled front pieces on the cow catcher. Start a new sketch, and right here you're going to find out if you go to start a new sketch and you can't grab that surface, you've made a mistake with your dimensioning, and you'll have to back up and redo those dimensions. I'm going to project some geometry first. I need to project this outline. And so project geometry, I'm going to click right in the center of that trapezoid, and it creates that yellow box. I'm going to come over here and choose the tool Offset. I really like this tool because it allows you to grab things and multiple lines, and you can move them and they all move together. I want this to be offset a very small amount. I need it to be offset only 0.1. Now I set that down. That was probably a mistake. I'm going to hit undo and redo that offset. Pull it down and say 0.1, enter, and there's my offset. Finish my sketch, and now I'm going to extrude not the outside circle, but the outside trapezoid, but the inside trapezoid. I only want it to go 0.05. But I want it to go in 0.05, not out, so it's going to negatively extrude. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this other side, exactly the same. Project my geometry, offset 0.1, finish my sketch, extrude, inside trapezoid, negatively extrude, OK. So now I have those two shapes input into. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shell this, and I'm going to cut out this inside part. I'm going to come up here and choose the shell tool. And the first thing it does is it chooses everything that you've got. You can see that shadow in there. And now I'm going to remove a face. I'm not going to click here because it's already chosen. And I'm going to remove this face. And when I do that, it's removing that face. The only other problem I've got is that this is fatter than here. That thickness is supposed to be 0.1, and this ends up being much fatter than 0.1. I'm going to say OK. And the cool thing about this is I can now come over on the left side here and drag it up above the extrusions, and it changes. And it moves those extrusions, so it changes the order that these things are happening. So now you can see this measurement is not as wide. If I click Control Z and undo what I just did, and then I can redo what I just did, and you can see the differences there. Clicking back home again, now I'm going to put some little nubs on the back here, some little extrusions on the back here that are going to allow it to attach to the train body. Start a new sketch, choose the correct surface, And this time I'm going to put some points on here because I want to make sure that I know exactly where they are. Start with a point here, put another one over here, and another one. Now when you put these down, you want to make sure you're not touching any of these white lines. You don't want it to be on anything. Set them down. Now I'm going to dimension those. So the first one, same as we did with the train body. How high off of the ground is it supposed to be? It appears to be 0.125. That means the other one needs to be the same, 0.125. How far is it from the corner? And it's going to be 0.275. Same thing as the other one. Now we have the middle one, so that's my 2 dimensions on that one. My middle one needs to be 0.625. And then it's going to be directly in the middle, which makes it 1.8 divided by 2. And so you can see that that's 0.9. And so there are my 3 points. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to put my circles on there because I didn't want to fight with the circles. I could have done the circles first, but now I have a green dot that I can work off of for each of these circles. So here's my green dot. Size of the circle, diameter of the circle is 0.125. And we're going to repeat that. For all 3 of these. I'm going to finish my sketch. I have those 3 circles, and I'm going to extrude all 3 of them. So I need to come over here and click on each one, and they go out 0.125. And the last thing I need to do is I need to chamfer each of the edges. I'm going to change the distance up front to 0.01. I don't want to change it afterwards. I want to make sure that I'm choosing my edges, and I can choose all 3 edges at the same time. Hit apply, and there it is. There is your cow catcher. Give it some color because the color makes it wonderful. This time I'm going to be a red. I want it to be something a little special. I'm going to choose my loft and my 2 extrusions. If I turn it up to the bottom, I probably want it to include the shell also. I don't know if I like that brown. I do like that though. A little bit of red and brown. I think that looks pretty good. I'm not going to do the back because it's not going to be there. It's going to be hidden. And there it is. Make sure you save it in the right spot.